From the Startup Experts community, this is the Becoming Better podcast, and I'm its host, Jesse Freese. Maggie, it's so great to see you today. Thank you for joining the Becoming Better podcast. Would you mind introducing yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, be happy to, and thanks so much for having me. It's always great to catch up with you anyway, but this is a great opportunity to talk about that. So my name is Maggie Ruvoldt. I have been in and out of HR for a little bit more than 30 years. I'm currently the CHRO of a company called Learn Behavioral. We are a healthcare company working with children with autism across the nation here in the United States. But before that, I had been in ed tech. I had done some consulting. I spent as much time as I can doing two things that I love in particular when it comes to work. One is mentoring, and the other is working with startups and doing startup advising. So that's a little bit about me, and I'm coming to you from Maryland, just outside of the Washington, D.C. area.
That's great. And, I spent a lot of time in Maryland myself before I moved to California. Amazing corner of the country. How did you get into HR? Like, how did you determine that was going to be something that you were passionate about?
Sure, interesting story. So I thought I was going to be a social worker. And when I first got out of college, I worked in a psychiatric hospital, thinking this was the path I was going to go on. And I quickly realized that that was not the place that I should be or what I should be doing. And I had an aunt who was in HR, had been in HR for years, and at that time was at GE. And this was in the 90s when GE was the place to be if you were going to be in HR. And she invited me to spend a day with her teams, and she did a rotation for me, and I got to have these informational interviews in all different kinds of jobs. And at the end of the day, she said to me, there's one thing you should always remember, no matter where you want to go in business, and that is everything else is replicatable except a dedicated team that's pointed in the right direction. And so HR is really the heart of every business, and it's how people differentiate themselves. And I thought, that's where I want to be.
Yeah, that's a great perspective. And if I'm not mistaken, I think you may be the second person on this podcast that has grown up through GE, or at least became inspired through GE. So that's interesting. What is one thing that people might not know about you that you love to do personally?
So I love to bake bread. Although I feel like I've talked about this so much recently that maybe people do know that about me. I picked it up for the pandemic, before everybody else did. But there's something about the rhythm of the kneading of the bread, the way it makes my house smell, giving my family something that I've created from nothing, it feels like, that is very therapeutic. And often when I've got a work problem or a personal problem, I find that if I can put together a loaf of bread, somehow that clears my brain in a way. It's almost like meditating, which I also love to do. So I think a lot of people would be surprised to hear that about me. Yeah,
I can completely agree with the aroma. I mean, I grew up, my mom is a chef, and so I grew up, and she's an active baker. And so bread smell memories take me back to a happy place. So I can understand that as being, a place to go to when things are stressed or you need a little moment of reprieve. This podcast and particularly this session is designed around becoming better. But I also want to celebrate you because you were celebrated earlier this year as one of our 25 leaders to follow in 2025. So congratulations.
Thank you. It was such an honor.
Appreciate that. And I've enjoyed getting to know you over the last couple of years. We see each other once a year at Transform, and you've been an amazing spokesperson both for Transform, but also for Startup Experts, giving us a shout out on stage, which brings me great joy. But I love to see all that you're doing, in and around the HR space. It really is admirable. Is there one thing in particular that you've learned recently that has just made you become a better person, teammate, human?
Yeah, and I love this question because I think we always, no matter where you are in your career, you always have to be open to feedback. You always have to be learning. I think of myself, I know it's an expression everybody uses, as a lifelong learner. But I had a moment recently where I was talking to somebody who works for me, and we were going back and forth debating a decision. And I said to her, look, I'm open to being wrong about this. And before I said the next thing, she had this amazing moment of courage where she said to me, are you really? And I was like, what? And I said, well, wait, what makes you say that? And she's somebody who's worked for me before at other companies. And she said, I've noticed over the years that when you say, I'm open to being wrong about this, you've already made up your mind. When you say, tell me what I'm missing here, you have not yet made a decision and you really are open to feedback. And it took me back for a second. And this is really recent. This is like in the past couple of months. And I thought, I was like, thank you, first of all, for that gift. That is a gift of feedback. And it made me step back in the conversation and say, you know what? Tell me what I'm missing. Tell me what I'm wrong about. And she did, and it broadened our conversation. And in the weeks that have followed, I have found myself at moments about to say, I'm open to being wrong about this. And it's now this little light bulb in my head before I say it, where I say, okay, how entrenched are you in this moment? And either say, look, I am really sure about my decision and it's going to be hard to sway me from here. Or take a moment, truly be open, and say the other thing. And so I have learned that even our subconscious language is so important, but even our subconscious language is telling us something, because I wasn't deciding to say one thing or the other. It was just the thing that came to my mind. And so now I think in those moments, I am showing up differently.
Yeah, no, that is so interesting. It reminds me a little bit of, as I hear that story, saying that statement really is defining your position and retrenching where you, and then saying, well, you can persuade me, but I might defend my position, as opposed to perhaps another way of communicating. It makes me think of a training I went through many, many years ago around negotiation, and how, somebody might say something that you might take as a no, and, this individual teaching the training was saying, okay, embrace that, pretend you're on a tennis court and step over the net and agree with them, and then work from that perspective, which
I love that analogy.
I sometimes think about as, okay, I see where you're at. Let's talk this through from your perspective. And I physically think about stepping over the net, and it changes the flow of the conversation, because we're not antagonistic anymore. We really are working through and trying to understand each other's positions. So, I'm open to changing my mind. Sort of as I think about that, you're still on either side of the net.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a great analogy. Having a visual like that, or a word or something that just causes us to pause. And I love what you said there about, like, now let me see it from the other person's point of view. Yeah. It resets the whole conversation.
It really does. Yeah. Interesting. Thank you for sharing that. So, we're almost through 2025, which is mind-blowing how quickly this year has gone. Is there anything in particular that you're working on that excites you, a new initiative, something you're fired up for that, frankly, might end up in 2026 by the time you fully deliver?
I have spent the year truly, like everybody else, obsessed with AI. So I've been taking every course that I can and things like that. But what I would say that what I'm excited about, I don't know if that it's so much as an initiative, is the fact that I'm in a lot of conversations where what we're talking about is what AI can't do. Where do we want to still have the human? I think we started the year thinking about, and this is true in our business, and this is true in every conversation I feel like I'm in these days, talking about where can we automate and where can we leverage it and where can we use it more. And the conversation has shifted over the course of the year, and I think this is going to bring us into 2026, and really talk about where does the human element still remain totally critical, and where are we adding value at the highest level, and how do we use AI as a tool to do the things where we don't add the most value, to free us all up. And I know it started out a little bit of like, oh, we're going to free ourselves up, but we weren't talking enough about what is it that people are bringing to the table. And so I'm excited to see how we are looking at our processes at Learn on where are the places where we still want to make sure we're having value, we're having the human touch. Humans are making the decisions. We're not sort of giving that over. I think we're in for a continually interesting ride around this. But the focus of the conversation is shifting in ways that I'm excited about.
Yeah, no, I've had some conversations related to this recently, and as we learn more about AI, and it's advancing on the daily, on the weekly. But I think what I've started to hear more and more is, most of the AI tools are either not ready to fully take over certain tasks, or the individual that wants them to, we're just not either skilled enough or nor have enough time to invest into making them sort of mold around our job and what we need to deliver day by day. And there's really this, some of these folks have talked about, and frankly, I've talked to some companies about, sort of these outsourced, advisors that, will plug into an organization and they really know how to maximize the use of AI, but it still comes with an individual, or, they'll help augment an individual on your team. And I'm somewhat fascinated by that because, as somebody who also uses AI and I spend a lot of time learning from it, you don't always get the results that you want. And it probably, in hindsight, it's, if not making me less efficient, I'm probably still neutral because it doesn't always produce what I want, and I try mightily to have it produce something that is better than what I would do without it, if that makes sense.
It totally does. And you're right on the efficiency gains, because I think we're all spending so much time checking its work because we don't trust it yet, that I don't know that it's making us all more efficient. I think there are definitely efficiency gains in certain areas, but you still gotta check the work.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you've had a lengthy career. I have as well. I love asking this question, particularly on behalf of individuals in the community that haven't had the reps that we have had. Right? Is there one hindsight moment where you look back and say, "Hey, I would have loved to have done this differently. If I encounter this again, I would have gone this way, not that way." And I love sharing these stories for other individuals in the community who might be able to listen to it and then head down the right path.
Yeah. I do believe that I learned more from the mistakes I made and the stumbles that I had than I did from the successes. For sure. I was definitely part of quite a number of projects that didn't go the way we wanted them to. But I would say, and I mentioned before, like sort of a moment of career courage that somebody had with me recently. There was a moment years ago where there was somebody that I worked with who was a bit of a bully. And I did not stand up to that person for myself as early as I would have liked to. I did it for other people. When I saw that person bullying somebody else, I felt 100% comfortable stepping in on somebody else's behalf, maybe because the stakes emotionally felt lower. But I look back on that moment, and that person has sort of weaved in and out of my career over the years. And I wish I had stood up to them in a way that I didn't. And it did inform how I met moments like that later. But that's, I would say, like, have courage and know that there are no real career fatalities. Like, short of breaking the law, you can recover from just about every mistake at work. So have the courage to stand up for yourself. Have the courage to say the thing that needs to be said that nobody else is saying in the room. Because even if it goes sideways on you, none of it's career ending. So I wish I had known that or thought that earlier than I did.
That's a great piece of advice. I often think about that. And, I think, as I get later in my career, I have built that confidence to say the unpopular thing that needs to be said. And I think that is definitely a characteristic that I wish I had embraced earlier, because I think it moves the conversation to a place of accuracy and sort of integrity quicker. Yeah.
It's also that aunt I mentioned earlier in the conversation. One of the things she said to me, this is probably 20 years ago now, as my career started to progress, was people who are willing to say the thing that nobody else is saying and the counterpoint, done in a respectful and appropriate way. It is a rare but highly valued skill to have a difficult conversation, to be the person who steps up and says something. And that if you develop that, not only does it move the conversation forward like you just mentioned, but it makes you stand out in your career, because people start to seek you out for the counterpoint. They know that you are willing to tell them the thing that they need to hear in a way that helps them, as opposed to a way that's, combative or antagonistic. And so it's a critical skill that a lot of people don't develop.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, you hold close and hold dear the friends that speak the truth.
Absolutely.
That's the type of feedback you actually want and can advance you the most personally and professionally. I agree with that. Well, thank you for sitting down, Maggie. It's been great to have a short conversation. We could go on for much, much longer. But congrats again for being celebrated as one of our 25 leaders in 2025. Keep it up. I always enjoy our chats and getting to know you better through these conversations. Is there one quick piece of advice that you'd share out to the folks at Startup Experts before we end up here?
Sure. And I think they're already doing it, which was networking, right? Build yourself a network. But the advice I'd give about the network is it's like a bank account. You've got to make deposits when you don't need it. Often people tap their network when they are looking for a new job or something like that's happening. Really invest in those long-term relationships and come to them thinking, what can I add? It's one of the great things about the Startup Experts community is that go-giver mentality. Take that to the rest of your network, take that to work every day, and you will be so surprised at what that does for you.
I love that. Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. So thank you, and thank you again for sitting down with me, and I appreciate you.
Thanks for having me. It's always good to see you.
Thank you for listening to this Becoming Better with Startup Experts discussion. If you're interested in learning more about our community and perhaps joining, please visit www.startupexperts.us.